Good morning, Ohio gozaimasu, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Cynthia Cook, Director of the Defense Industrial Initiatives Group here at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and a Senior Fellow in the International Security. Particular focus on unmanned aerial systems and electro-optical sensors. That report is forthcoming. Today at our event, we'd like to focus on the broad challenges and opportunities from across the defense industrial ecosystem in Japan and the United States, from both the government and industry perspective. It is my very great pleasure to introduce our first speaker of this morning, Melissa Benkert. She is the Director for International Cooperation in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, the Assistant Secretary of Defense Industrial Base Policy. She is responsible for leading, developing, and implementing international armaments cooperation policy within the Department of Defense and in coordination with other U.S. government agencies, foreign governments, and the defense industry. Prior to this, Melissa Benkert served as the Director for Planning, Programs, and Analysis, which focuses on the authorization of international agreements for research, development, production, and logistics support. So a round of applause, and let's welcome our first guest speaker.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you this morning. I apologize for the Washington traffic calamities, but I am delighted to be here and to take a few minutes to share some thoughts with you from the Acquisition and Sustainment Undersecretariat perspective, and then hopefully we'll have a good dialogue here today. So a special thank you to the CSIS team for gathering us for this timely discussion, and thank you to each of our industry partners that we have here today, and most importantly, thank you to our Japanese colleagues for joining us today and for the deep and long-standing partnership that we have shared. And I think today's discussion will prove out that that relationship is deepening and we have a lot of work to do together. So as President Biden has noted, we are living in a decisive decade with peer and near-peer threats to contend with. No one, I believe, understands this better than those of you who are in the Indo-Pacific region. You live daily with these evolving threats. The April 10 state visit demonstrates the seriousness of our shared commitment, all the more so now, as the strength of our alliance guides us in addressing the evolving challenges within the Indo-Pacific region. We are eagerly working toward and looking forward to Prime Minister Kishida's visit in the coming weeks. There is, as you can imagine, a great flurry of activity in preparation. So a lot of excitement. In response to the evolving peer and near-peer threats, the 2022 National Defense Strategy sets DoD's strategic direction to support U.S. national security priorities. And as many of you have been tracking, the NDS lays out 4 top-level defense priorities: defending the homeland, paced at the growing multi-domain threat posed by the People's Republic of China, deterring strategic attacks against the United States, allies, and partners, deterring aggression while being prepared to prevail in conflict when necessary, prioritizing the PRC challenge in the Indo-Pacific, and then Russia challenge in Europe, building a resilient joint force and defense ecosystem. Integral to achieving these critical priorities is an innovative and resilient industrial base, national as well as global in nature. With the PRC as our pacing challenge, the U.S. DoD will bolster Indo-Pacific security by working more seamlessly across domains, conflict spectrum, and instruments of national power in lockstep with our allies and partners. At the forefront of our collective security mission is the need to sustain and strengthen U.S. deterrence, while reinforcing that our collaboration with allies and partners is key at every stage of the defense planning process to address shared challenges. So how do we affect this industrial cooperation in support of our national defense strategy objectives? Building on the NDS, in March of last year, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks directed creation of a defense industrial strategy. She recognized the need to modernize our industrial base and seize the opportunity to leverage work that had been done in response to the global pandemic and in support of Ukraine to create a vision for a modernized defense industrial ecosystem. With this DepSecDef direction and taking the lead from the National Defense Strategy, our first ever National Defense Industrial Strategy was released earlier this year. The NDIS will catalyze generational change from the existing defense industrial base to a more robust, resilient, and dynamic modernized defense industrial enterprise. And I use the word enterprise here at this point, and I will take you on a brief sentimental journey for myself. Many, many years ago, I deployed with one of the U.S. Navy carrier strike groups, and it was under the command of Admiral Jim Stavridis. The aircraft carrier that was the lead of the strike group was the USS Enterprise. Admiral Stavridis frequently made note of the importance of the word enterprise. And for us at the time, obviously, the name of our good ship, but importantly, he emphasized that enterprise has multiple meanings, right? It is a project or undertaking. And it is also reflective of initiative, a showing of readiness to engage in a difficult action. And so when we're talking about this generational change, I also view this generational change as our collective enterprise. It is a challenge. It is going to require us to have steady readiness as we look to address many of the inhibitors that have created the current challenges that we are experiencing in the defense industrial ecosystem. So the NDIS is a call for revitalization, modernization, and expansion of the defense industrial base and provides a framework for the Department of Defense to action in coordination and engagement to build a modernized defense industrial ecosystem, our enterprise activity. The NDIS outlines 4 long-term priorities to guide our policy and resource prioritization decisions: resilient supply chains, workforce readiness, flexible acquisition, and economic deterrence. As we move forward to implement these long-term NDIS priorities, we seek to do so in partnership with our allies and partners. This morning, I'd like to take a few minutes to emphasize the supply chain and the flexible acquisition focus areas. So, resilient supply chains. One of the 4 long-term strategic priorities is resilient supply chains, and we are focused on having supply chains that can securely produce the products, services, and technologies needed now and in the future at speed, scale, and cost. To address this priority, the DoD seeks to incentivize industry to improve resilience by investing in extra capacity, manage our inventory and stockpile planning to decrease near-term risk, and we will continue to expand support for domestic production. We will seek to drive investment in organic industrial base and production accelerators. We will diversify the supplier base and invest in new production methods. We look to be innovative across the board in this process and identifying opportunities to seize on new new production technologies is one of the key attributes of our goal here. We seek to leverage data analytics to improve sub-tier visibility, to identify and maximize strategic supply chain risks and manage disruptions proactively. And finally, and cross-cutting, we seek to engage our allies and partners to expand global defense production and increase supply chain resilience. To defend the nation and deter America's adversaries, DoD works to ensure our armed forces have reliable access to every advantage, which is enabled by manufacturing and delivering defense platforms and weapon systems in a timely and reliable manner. Meeting that mission requires a healthy domestic industrial base built on resilient, diverse, and secure supply chains. Our international partners are a critical component of this mission. Our relationships with our allies will play a key role in advancing our national security priorities of expanding economic prosperity and opportunity and rebuilding supply chains for critical goods. DoD's action plan in response to Executive Order 14017, America's Supply Chains, this was about a year prior to the release of our strategy. It reviewed the breadth and the scale of defense supply chains and prioritized critical vulnerabilities posing the most pressing threats to our national security. Many of you know that these supply chain focus areas include kinetic capability, energy storage and batteries, castings and forgings, microelectronics, and strategic and critical materials. The department continues to refine its assessment of vulnerable supply chains and is utilizing a variety of tools to mitigate and correct challenges to essential industries. I'm going to say a few words on flexible acquisition. We are seeking to prioritize flexible acquisition strategies to address inappropriate and unnecessary customization. Design changes driven by mission or technology creep during protracted development cycle times inhibit our ability to optimize for dynamic production and achieve scale swiftly. Increasing standardization allows for economies of scale, streamlined production, and greater interoperability. We seek to utilize flexible funding and procurement mechanisms, and these mechanisms must factor the requirements and contributions of our international partners. Critically for our allies and partners, standards, modularity, and interoperability are essential elements that enable mutual support and collaboration within the global defense ecosystem. One overlapping contracting initiative that I just want to offer as an example today stems from Secretary Austin's recent review of the foreign military sales process. And it aims to increase visibility of contracting timelines to ensure our international partners are able to make procurement decisions at the national level that align with our acquisition program managers' contract negotiations and award timelines. This is all with the goal of providing clear demand signals for our industry partners, improved delivery timelines, and economies of scale. And so while there are a number of reviews and initiatives and strategies within the department, we are very much pursuing a cohesive approach as we look to implement all of these initiatives and activities that are highlighted through our interwoven strategy documents. In the Indo-Pacific region, we seek to develop a networked cooperative framework that enhances defense industrial output by working with allies and partners to de-risk supply chains and advance our ability to engage in co-production, co-sustainment, maintenance, repair, and overhaul. A term that has been used to describe this activity is friendshoring, wherein allies and partners build defense production facilities in partner nations, with both sides benefiting from enhanced collaboration, workforce improvements, innovation, an increased supply for greater capacity as these arrangements are interwoven. Co-production and friendshoring has been referred to as production diplomacy by my boss, Undersecretary LaPlante. And it is a term that is cross-cutting through the entire NDIS document. We are seeking to engage our allies and partners to enhance our ability to ensure delivery of military warfighting capability at the time of need. And this production diplomacy has been playing out originally in the post-pandemic environment where we were working very hard to close in on scarce items. And we have been very much learning from our experience and our support for Ukraine and how it is we can work together globally to ensure that the most important needs are being met at the critical point in time of need. In the wake of the Russian Federation's unprovoked aggression towards Ukraine, the U.S. led international community to rally their defense. And in so doing, organizing recurring engagements at the head of ministry level and at the National Armament Director level to coordinate support efforts. These engagements have jump-started initiatives to expand ammunition production, establish international support funds, and organize the delivery and sustainment of critical capabilities. And I would note, with no small amount of innovation involved, crisis creates a significant driving factor in our ability to think outside the box and innovate. Building off the global experience of the Ukraine conflict, there may be opportunities to similarly convene the leadership of allied and partner nations within the Indo-Pacific to deepen multilateral cooperation and regional industrial base and manufacturing production challenges. Rather than wait for emergency circumstances, investing in these relationships now will yield fruit should we collectively face crisis in the coming years. This is the power of production-oriented diplomacy. Incorporating allies and partners into a more networked and web-like production chain would enable expansion of production, additional capacity for longer contests. I think one of the things we're learning from Ukraine, it's essential for all of our nations to plan for high-end conflict utilization rates. And we are very much addressing the impact of maybe globally not planning for that, and our industrial partners are working with us to try to, find a way forward. We are looking to incentivize among our regional partners so that we can cooperate in resisting coercion from adversaries, and these areas of dialogue, I think, lay the bedwork for all of that. We look forward to engaging our Japanese counterparts in this journey to realize the generational change, building a dynamic, modernized defense industrial base. I'd like to again thank our CSIS colleagues for organizing us here today, and I look forward to the discussion we will have. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. That was terrific. And the NDIS is absolutely a long-awaited contribution to the defense industrial ecosystem. So it was great to hear that overview. Our next keynote speaker, who I am delighted to introduce, is Yoshida Ikuo. He is the Deputy Director, Equipment Policy Division and the Technology Strategy Division at the Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics Agency, or ATLA, in the Ministry of Defense, Japan. Prior to his current role, he was the Chief Executive Director at ATLA's representative office here in Washington, D.C. He is here representing ATLA, which was founded in 2015 under the Japanese Ministry of Defense to handle project and technology management, research and development, and procurement of defense equipment for the Japan self-defense forces. ATLA is also the sponsor of this project, for which we are grateful, and we are delighted to welcome Yoshida-san back to DC. After his keynote address, my colleague Christopher Johnson, Senior Advisor and Japan Chair here at CSIS, will join both Yoshida-san and Ms. Benkert here on the stage for a moderated discussion. Yoshida-san?
Hi, good morning. It's nice and bright here today. So good morning, everyone. My name is Iko Yoshida. I'm Deputy Director of Technology Strategy Division and Deputy Director of Equipment Policy Division of ATLA headquarters. And I'm involved in international cooperation programs, industrial cooperation, and advanced technologies. And I'm so happy that I'm back in Washington, D.C., and I'd like to say thank you for Mr. Johnson and Ms. Cook from the CSIS and other members of CSIS to organize this event, invite me to speak. And thank you to Ms. Benkert from A&S for supporting Japan-U.S. defense cooperation, especially with ATLA. In the recent months, I work with more on the research and engineering team of OSC, but I used to work with Ms. Benkert for programs such as the Science and Technology Forums we have regularly. And today I see many familiar faces. As Ms. Cook said just now, I was stationed in Washington, D.C. In total, I think 7 years. I was once a Missile Defense Program Officer stationed, and I used to work with the Missile Defense Agency. And for the last 5 years, I was Director of ATLA Office, USA. And I was involved in industrial cooperation, technology cooperation, and the foreign military sales issues. It was really hard. So I see many familiar faces, and I just wanted to say that I turned 50 yesterday. Was my birthday. So I'm just saying that although I recognize your faces, it takes me more time to remember your names. But anyway, I'll be spending about 10 minutes or so to talk about defense industry and technology and Japan-U.S. cooperation. Okay. First of all, security situation. If you look at the security situation of the world, it's safe to say that we are in one of the most difficult and complex times. If you look at Europe, the Russian aggression against Ukraine is happening. In the Middle East, we have the war between Israel and Hamas. And in a Japanese proverb, we say that fire breaking out on the other side of the river, meaning that something's happening far in the distance. So it's not relevant. You are safe. That's the proverb that we say that. But the situation in the Middle East and Europe, they are not a fire breaking out in the distance, because it could have spillover effects and it could worsen the security situation in the Indo-Pacific. And if you look at the situation in our neighborhood in East Asia, we see China and North Korea upgrading their military activities and expanding their military forces. So it's not only about the military activities. We have to also look at cutting-edge technologies. That we are seeing lots of advanced technologies emerging, and that could change the way we fight in the future. So in this security situation, we have to prepare our defense capabilities for the emergency scenarios in the Pacific. So the defense capability is supported by the defense production and the technology basis. And it is very crucial that we maintain Japan and United States cooperation from the perspective of defense production and the technology basis. So firstly, let me start off by talking about our initiatives to enhance defense production and technology bases. And we, government, issued a security and defense strategy document in December 2022. And the importance of enhancing defense production technology bases is clearly described there. The defense production technology basis is very important, and we say that it's an integral part of our defense capability. So we heavily rely on our defense industry for production and the technology development of our weapon systems. But our industry in Japan is facing various risks. So the Japanese government needs to take initiatives to address those risks. So in this situation, here in Japan, we passed the law on enhancing defense production and technology bases, which was enacted in October last year. And this law is one of the initiatives to strengthen defense production technology bases drastically. And the measures to strengthen the bases under this law includes supporting resilient supply chain and the efficient manufacturing process, and establishing a fund to smoothly carry out the export of defense equipment, strengthening information security in the defense industry, and measures for the government ownership of manufacturing facilities, which is known as GOCO, government-owned, and the contractor operated. And we are hoping that these measures under this law will be important pathways for Japanese defense industry to become more reliable in the international community. And in addition to these measures under this new law, the government of Japan announced the first revision of the 3 principles on transfer of defense equipment and technology at the end of 2023. And I would like to introduce some of the revisions of the new 3 principles. And one is the export of licensed products in Japan back to the license provider countries, which includes United States and other nations. So the revised 3 principles now allows the export of a complete system as a whole under the license, not just the spare parts. So, for example, in December last year, the government of Japan approved for the export of Patriot missiles to the U.S. under the new 3 principles. So, in the past, we could only export spare parts of the missiles, such as Seeker gyro inside the missiles. So, this is an unprecedented initiative that enables Japan to replenish the Patriot missiles stockpiles of U.S. forces and supports their readiness. And secondly, in addition to the U.S. forces, maintenance and repair services can now be provided to armed forces of other countries, which are in cooperative relationship with Japan. And Japanese companies have good quality maintenance and repair capabilities that have been supporting self-defense forces and the U.S. forces Japan. And we are hoping to broaden the scale of industrial cooperation between Japan and the United States under these new 3 principles. And further revision of the 3 principles is under coordination inside the government, including what the rules and the process should look like if the export of the GCAP, next generation fighter, should happen to countries other than the partner countries, United Kingdom and Italy. And maybe also I should say that even after the revisions, individual export cases will continue to be subject to the government-wide examination assessment, and will be in the scope of relevant legislation and regulations. Okay, 2 more pages. And now I'd like to turn your attention to our future bilateral cooperation. As I mentioned earlier, it is very important for Japan and the United States to build a mutually robust and a credible defense supply chain. From that point, we are very glad that the U.S. government issued a National Defense Industrial Strategy in January that emphasizes the importance of co-development, co-production, co-sustainment with allies and partners. We'd like to continue a discussion with the U.S. government counterparts to identify what specific areas will have a future potential for cooperation. And we agree that it's just not possible for one single country to complete its supply chain on its own, and we will be working together with the United States and other like-minded countries on this subject. And in the field of cutting-edge technology, ATLA announced our policy to strengthen research and development of technologies such as artificial intelligence, autonomous technologies, uncrewed technologies, quantum science, and other areas in the defense technologies guidelines in 2023, which was formulated last June. We are now paying close attention to technologies such as uncrewed aerial systems, UAV technology. We are aware that the United States Air Force has a program of CCA, Collaborative Combat Aircraft, and they are considering potential international cooperation. And we are very interested in that. At the end of 2023, the ATLA and the United States Air Force signed a project arrangement for joint research on AI technology, which is expected to be applied to UAVs that will be operated with our new next-generation fighters. And ATLA is planning to stand up a new research institute, which will be focusing on defense innovation and technology. That will happen later this year, and we will continue to further promote cooperation in cutting-edge technology areas. And by strengthening cooperation between Japan and the United States in such areas, we will ensure that the technological superiority of the alliance, and we are hoping that this will lead eventually to further enhancement of defense industrial bases of both Japan and the United States. Okay, let me conclude my speech by emphasizing the following points. So one is strengthening and maintaining defense industrial technology bases, and acquiring cutting-edge equipment and technologies are all important elements for achieving common strategic objectives and ensuring deterrence. Close bilateral cooperation on a regular basis and sustained efforts are necessary to pursue these challenges. And secondly, ATLA, we will be continuing to further promote Japan-US collaboration, engaging in active discussions with Department of Defense and the United States forces. And through enhanced defense production and technology bases, we will continue to further strengthen the deterrence and the response capabilities of our alliance together. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning, during my stay in the United States, I met many members from the United States Department of Defense, both A&S and R&E, and members from U.S. industry and researchers from think tanks for thinking seriously about the security and defense of Japan, and providing us insights and good ideas on what our future cooperation should look like. And we really appreciate that. We really appreciate the friendship from the United States and constant and strong support for Japan-US alliance. We will continue our efforts and work with the United States. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Johnstone. I'm Senior Advisor and Japan Chair here at CSIS. We're going to have a bit of a conversation here on stage, and then we'll try to leave some time at the end for questions from our audience. But thanks to you both, Ms. Benkert, Melissa, and Yoshida-san, for two Great sort of overview presentations, what the United States is doing in terms of efforts to strengthen the defense industrial base, and what Japan is doing broadly to strengthen your defense industry. So let's dig in a little bit about the future of U.S.-Japan cooperation in this space, if I can. And Melissa, as you noted in your remarks, new National Defense Industrial Strategy includes a strong emphasis on the role of allies, one of our most important assets, right? And I think, as you noted, sort of the war in Ukraine and what we're seeing globally underscores the importance of robust allied defense industrial capacity that we can all sort of, to some degree, tap into, right? So I wonder if you could talk specifically about the relationship with Japan in this context and how DoD is thinking about leveraging some of the changes that Yoshida-san spoke to advance our own industrial strategy and to strengthen the alliance.
Thank you. I think one of the unsung but critical tools that we have at our disposal are the security of supply arrangements that we have with various nations. And as we have been helping Ukraine through a prolonged conflict, we have been digging down into where the root cause challenges are in delivering product. And in that process, then we look to problem solve. We do that for ourselves, but we do that in partnership with our colleagues globally. And so we have been responding to a great number of requests for priority ratings in the DPAS system. And what we look to do in the department is understand what the circumstances are in a supply chain component and assess where we are with U.S. requirements and try to mitigate and then help our partners. And we've got a couple of these issues we've been working with Japan and try then to ensure that we are getting a critical material, a component, an actual subsystem delivered to our partners, perhaps ahead of where U.S. forces would be receiving that, because we've taken a full spectrum look at where the most important need at the most important point in time is. And so we are very much partnering to do that globally. And I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful tool, and it's a opportunity to increase our dialogue about where we see the issues and challenges for supporting our forces collectively, and then also then supporting forces across the spectrum.
Great, thanks. Yoshida-san, well, I'll ask you both more about sort of what you see as particular opportunities in bilateral cooperation. But Yoshida-san, let me ask you first about Japanese defense industry. So I think it's fair to say that Japan's defense industry is somewhat unique, right? There really isn't the concept of a defense prime in Japan in the way that it exists here, right? Defense has been sort of a component, but a not particularly large one, of a number of Japanese companies. I know there's also been concern in recent years about small and medium-sized enterprises leaving the defense sector. And so this was all a driver for some of the changes that you spoke about, including the new law that was enacted in October 2023. Could you say a little bit about how you see Japan's defense industry responding to these changes, both the increase in spending, the budget growth, the increased investments in R&D, but also the legal changes intended to support more vibrant industry? How do you see Japanese industry responding at this point?
As far as I know, I think we have very positive responses from the Japanese industry. You know, the background of this legislation is after our governments talking with and interacting with the Japanese defense industry and listening to their issues, their challenges they have, especially regarding the withdrawing their businesses from the defense field because of the small size of the investment they can enjoy from defense. And so the legislation is based on those the challenges that we have, and that's our government's response to those challenges. And so I think that as far as I know, they will enjoy what the benefits that the legislation will bring, and we think that they are quite positive about the legislation. And of course, the budget increase, we are expecting to have it up to the 2% of GDP within the 5 years, which is already a challenge, as far as I know. But our industry is hoping that that will increase the business opportunities in defense. We have so many small and medium-sized companies. They have very good, startup companies having advanced technologies. So they are doing great as far as I know. So I think, but they still need some government advocacy and support, especially sort of finance, probably. So I think the legislation and our approach should be well received by the Japanese defense industry.
Yeah, and certainly it will take time for the full impact of these changes to be felt, I'm sure. But interesting to hear that you're already seeing sort of a response. So let me ask you both this question about kind of the future opportunities. For co-development, co-production to succeed, you really have to have a constellation of stars kind of align, right? There's the requirements question. Do we have common security requirements? Common timeframes for bringing new capabilities online, complementary industrial strengths that lend themselves to cooperation, and then policies in place that enable sharing and protecting sensitive information and technology. So when you think about all those things that have to sort of be in the right place, where do you see some of the most promising capability areas or other cooperative areas for the U.S. and Japan moving forward? Where should we be thinking about opportunities for deeper integration over the longer term? Melissa, could I start with you on that question?
Yeah, sure. So I think, as I mentioned, the NDIS is the framework for what is a course correction from many years of perhaps not having enough focus on industrial matters. And so this generational change essentially is kicking off, right? So now we have the business of implementing the strategy and in partnership with our global partners. And so I think it's going to be essential, as you know, this is a complex bit of business. And so it will be essential, I think, to have a very clear understanding of what U.S. requirements are in the region, what Japan's requirements are, and frankly, we will be looking to forge multilateral relationships and understanding how it is we in the Indo-Pacific region writ large are poised to support each other and address peer and near-peer threats. And so I think it's time to roll up our sleeves. Right, and then it's important to have an understanding of the business case, right? So there's a lot of enthusiasm for co-production and co-development, but as you alluded to, right, there needs to be an alignment of where these issues fall within national priorities, significantly funding priorities, and where there are the best capabilities to bring to bear, and how our industry partners are arranging for these teaming relationships. Our industry partners already have significant relations with Japanese companies, and so I think it's a bit of business to try to figure out where we focus. Is it along the lines of your early experiences here in Washington with our MDA colleagues, but significantly we are recognizing the need for MRO&U capability in the region, and so it is full spectrum, and I think the hard work is really underway, and the state visit is a great impetus for us to really get that dialogue kick-started.
Yeah, this MRO area strikes me as a potentially very promising one in light of what Japan's industrial capacity can provide. But Yoshida-san, how do you think about the future?
As from the experience of working as a missile defense liaison officer here, Block 2A production was a very successful program, and that was the area that Japan and the United States had the same requirements At the time we had missile, the ballistic missiles testing happening a lot from the North Korea. So we had similar scenarios and similar requirements. So that's why we had a very successful missile production development programs. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And of course, we have now a GPI program, Graphite Interceptor, still missile defense area, which we see the development of technology, and Japan and the United States have the same requirements. So we have to find the common requirements. And for that purpose, we have to continue discussions. We have many ideas on the Japan side. We have lots of technologies, very good industrial bases. We have many good things that we can work on to create cooperative projects. But sometimes we have to align our requirements, align our policies, and we have to do very detailed work on how we can share the scope of work, how we share the costs of doing the program. So that requires us a lot of work. So we'd like to continue our collaboration with ANS and ALAI. We have regular frameworks of discussions, and we'd like to utilize those discussions for more detailed discussions to find out, identify what areas would be promising for us.
I want to turn in a second to the state visit and what might come out of that. But first, Yoshida-san, let me ask you a specific question about some of the things that ATLA is working on. My understanding is that ATLA, this current fiscal year that's about to start, so the next fiscal year, I guess, will start on April 1st, ATLA will be launching a new research institution, sort of loosely modeled, as I understand it, on some combination of DARPA and DIU, which, of course, in our system do very different things. But as I understand it, in your system, this organization will do both, sort of identifying new technologies, trying to bring them into the defense ecosystem. Could you say a little bit about this initiative and what we can expect?
I visit many European countries. I visit Australia. I visit United States to advertise our new research institute. And they ask, you have a DIU methodology and a DARPA methodology put under the same roof, and working on many different projects on different cutting-edge technologies. And they're asking me how you going to do that, and it is a very ambitious challenges. But at ATLA, we think we can do that. So we have been contacting the officials of a Defense Innovation Unit in San Francisco. We are, visiting the DARPA and asking about how they do their business. One is short-term, more on acquiring the cutting-edge technologies that are existing currently in the current defense industry. The other is a longer term, spending years of technology research to get a more advanced technology. So our plan is we have that organization established sometime later this year, and we are going to hire project managers from outside, so we can, of course, learn from the project managers from outside ATLA, and we will be asking them for help, a lot of help regarding what cutting-edge technologies should be involved in the future combat. So that's our plan currently, and I don't think I have any other things to say about the currency. But
so
you will find out there.
Project managers from outside. You mean outside government?
Oh, outside government.
Outside
of course,
government.
There are lots of researchers in the United States, DIU, DARPA, of course, the university institutes in the United States, and we are reaching out to them for their possible involvement in our new project.
Great. Okay, well, let's turn to the visit for a moment. I'd like to ask each of you Prime Minister's coming. April 10th and 11th are his days in Washington. Big visit. My understanding is that there is discussion internally about some possible outcomes related to defense industrial cooperation between our two countries. I wonder what you're able to share with us about some of what's going on and what we can anticipate. And Melissa, could I start with you?
Sure, absolutely. I think what I can share today is that there is a flurry of activity, a lot of dialogue, and I think one of the key elements from the way we are looking at this and approaching it is to ensure that when we are going to be proposing areas for cooperation, that we're setting our Japanese colleagues and ourselves and our industry partners up for success. And so there is a bit of deep diving going on right now to really ensure that the activities that we all endeavor to pursue are going to be really, to your earlier point, meeting our requirements.
Of course.
And doing so in a timely and cost-effective way. And so there is a lot of activity. I'm not going to steal the leader's thunder on any potential announcements, but there is the visit, your strategy, our strategy, is creating essentially a new dialogue, a new opportunity. So you had mentioned the S&T forum that we have. We are very keen to refresh and relook. And so having these very detailed discussion opportunities for acquisition challenges and priorities is a new path forward for us, I think, to deepen that relationship. And now there is a significant element of bringing in our industrial problem set, really, and how it is we partner successfully with industry. So industry is, in fact, successful. Everybody, they're in business to be in business. But it is, I think, an opportunity for revitalized, enhanced, and expanded dialogue.
Glad to hear that your point about refreshing the S&TF, because I think that is, I would agree with you, that's a needed thing to kind of modernize that forum to reflect where we are in the relationship. So good. Look forward to what's coming out. Yoshida-san, what are you able to say?
Yes. What I'm able to say, right? Yeah, I know. About the state visit, I think I don't have much information, but of course, because I work at technology and equipment on the ATLA, I really hope that there will be some agreement of the cooperation in those areas. And I think Ms. Benkert, you said most of the things I wanted to say, so I don't have anything to add to that. I apologize for that.
One last question before we open it up here. I feel compelled to ask this. There's been some reporting in the press, as you probably know, about a possible role for Japan in AUKUS. And not Japanese membership in AUKUS, but perhaps Japanese participation in an AUKUS Pillar 2 project. I wonder what each of you would be able to say about that. And Yoshida-san, when we get to, I'll start with Melissa, but we'll be interested in sort of how Japan thinks about participation in AUKUS as a priority. But Melissa, could I start with you as well?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So unlike the Pillar 1 activity set, which is a particular significant opportunity and change for how it is we are looking at nuclear-powered submarine capabilities. We are open to adding additional partners within the Pillar 2 rubric. And since its inception, President Biden and his colleagues in Australia and UK have been very open and clear, I think, that we would seek out opportunities to work with allies and partners, and I think that will need to have some further refinements in terms of where we are positioned to move forward on activities and where there is a good synergy with an ally or partner.
Yeah, synergy is the key point, right?
Yeah.
Yoshida-san?
Yeah, for the pillar 2, I think we have a list of the areas that AUKUS will be focusing on. I have seen the list, and there are lots of technology, of course, included in the list. And I think there will be lots of potential. We just need to have do some contacts among the 4 nations to identify the areas. But I would say that working with 3 other nations it would be it wouldn't be easy. I would say working with the United States is already difficult. It was a very complicated experience for the Block 2A program. So although we are interested, we also have to spend some time to identify if the cooperation with AUKUS 3 nations and Japan would really work. Yes, it's pretty hard to align the requirements among the 4 nations.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in the White House at the time the AUKUS initiative was announced, and you're exactly right, Melissa, that this was a part of the messaging from the beginning, that Pillar 2 projects would be open to other partners where it made sense to do so. So hopefully we can find a specific thing to move forward on in the near term.
And I'll just add an additional thought. In the global events combined also with the intention of our AUKUS partnership, there's a lot of discussion about information sharing. And so I think that even if there is not a particular cooperative activity that is multilateral at 5 or 6 numbers of nations, there is a lot of information sharing that needs to take place to ensure that we're interoperable and that national systems actually are going to be able to talk to each other in moments of criticality. So I think there is, at a very minimum right now, an increase in the dialogue. So.
Great. Excellent. Okay, well, let's open this up. We can do 1 or 2 questions before we transition to the industry panel. If you have a question, please raise your hand, identify yourself, and then keep your question concise. Any takers in the room? Yes, right here, please. So we have a microphone coming your way.
Thank you very much for your speech. My name is Issei Shinohara from Mitsubishi Corporation. I have a question to Ms. Bernka about the NDIS from Japanese industry perspective. This is somewhat overlap of the question by Chris, but what is the implication to the Japanese industry of issuance of NDIS by the U.S. government at this moment, and what kind of role exactly U.S. government is expecting Japanese industry to take role in a global resilient supply chain? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think we are very interested to enhance our government-to-government dialogue, but we're interested to enhance industry-to-industry dialogue. Because a lot of the things that we have pursued are government-to-government, either bilaterally or multilaterally. Yeah. But there is also, I think, a great desire to increase the partnership amongst industry globally, so that we are understanding where there are multiple opportunities for supply for a number of critical items, components, even subsystems. Right there is not enough supply in the universe. So I think it's incumbent upon us as nations to identify where those critical requirements are and where there are essential gaps, and then try to help promote and encourage the dialogue between us as nations, but the dialogue with industry amongst yourselves as well. And so I think we want to ensure that there is enough cohesion so that there isn't an unproductive, costly duplication of effort, but that is going to ensure that we have enough connective tissue between our industries and to meet our national requirements, as well as potentially the broader global requirements. So.
Any other questions from the room? Okay, well, please join me in really a round of applause for both Ms. Benkert and for Yoshida-san. Really appreciated your remarks and then the Q&A here today. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it. Great. And give us just a moment to swap out, and we'll have the next panel join us.
Thank you, and welcome back. I am Sadiq Cook, and very pleased to be joined on stage by two of our industry experts so that we can get the industry perspective on defense industrial cooperation. We've heard what the government is trying to do. Now let's hear how the industry experiences it and what their perspectives are on what else the governments can do to encourage and catalyze defense industrial cooperation. First, let me introduce our two industry panelists. First, we have Akiyama Masao, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager, Aerospace and Defense Systems of IHI Americas Incorporated. In this capacity, he spent 14 years here in DC supporting U.S.-Japan cooperation through existing programs, as well as exploring new potential projects and programs. He supports the coordinations of licensed production programs with U.S. prime companies and suppliers. He is particularly focused on exploring the possibility of new and novel U.S.-Japanese security cooperation in space and defense. So welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Our second panelist today is Mr. Brent Bombach, who is the Vice President, Head of Government Relations and Public Policy for NEC Corporation of America. In this role, he oversees the Government Relations and Public Policy team. He manages NEC's public policy development and engagement with the U.S. Congress, executive branch agencies, state and local leaders, and other stakeholders to advance these policy goals. Before joining NEC, Mr. Bombach held several roles in the United States Senate, including Staff Director and Policy Director for the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee subcommittee. So hopefully he can reflect on his experience both representing Japanese industry, but also perhaps from the U.S. side as well. So welcome, both of you. If you would like to start off with some brief remarks, and if not, we will just get started with some questions and save a little time at the end for audience questions.
I have to say one thing.
Yes.
That I cannot represent my company, IHI or IHI Aerospace. This is my personal view from my experience working for the space and defense industries.
Okay, thank you
I have to say this.
for clarifying that, yes.
I have to say this. So, thank you.
I'll make a similar disclaimer. Obviously, these are my views, but guided obviously from my experiences with NEC, which I think most folks probably in this room are familiar that are in this space. But NEC is obviously an information communications technology company. We do a lot of work in the commercial space and enterprise customers, as well as public sector non-defense, but plenty of work in defense in Japan, here in the United States, and throughout the world. So really important conversation. Thanks for having us part of it.
Thank you, and appreciate the fact that you represent different kinds of businesses, different kinds of sectors, because I think we'll get more robust conversation with interesting views. So why don't we start off by talking about cooperation, which is the goal here. Both the United States and Japan have highlighted the importance of cooperation, both in their written policies and then in their public remarks. And in fact, both of our government representatives just now highlighted the importance of this. So maybe we can reflect on cooperation from an industry perspective. What are the catalysts for cooperation? What enhances cooperation? And does the government have a role in incentivizing those? Are there particular policy steps that you can identify? Give us your broad thoughts about how the government can enhance cooperation above and beyond the broad policy statements.
Okay, I'll start it. So from my experience working for collaborations like license production and sometimes direct commercial sales, and one of the things I just have in my mind is license produced products is not qualified by the U.S. government. And the thing is, it's license produced products is only qualified by government of Japan. And so when we talk about like a co-production or cross productions, then we have to get both government qualification, and the qualification rules or the process is a little bit different. And if the government can talk each other to have some kind of a common qualification system, or then it's gonna be the industries can talk each other deeply to make the production jointly and sell to both government. That may be one of the next step, maybe.
Okay.
And another thing I've been starting talking about is it's a new term. I made it, Japanese U.S. platform, or vice versa. That means license production we have to comply to the prime drawing or procedures, but we have been working too many years, so maybe we can make it similar. I mean, same level or similar or level in Japanese way to make the production. Then it's gonna be faster or maybe cost effective. And then when Japanese industry makes those U.S. platforms in Japan, then they can feedback those techniques back to the United States also. And this didn't happen this never happened. So that's my dream I'm trying to do right now.
So highlighting that the government can play a role in
Yes.
both of those. All right, well, perspectives?
So I think the incentivizing, I think, is an interesting concept, and I think it's important both looking at both sides, looking attempts here in the U.S. and in Japan, and then how do we do that together? And obviously, there's been a lot of attempts here in the U.S. to bring in new businesses into the market and looking longer term, talking about the requirements of the Defense Department. So we're preparing things. Companies here are preparing and investing appropriately. Similar efforts, great efforts going on in Japan. I was excited to highlighting of the new research institute upcoming, which I think has a lot of interest in getting that early involvement in what are those technology investments that need to be coming? What are the requirements? And be part of that conversation early on and have industry and academia, researchers, all part of that conversation. So it doesn't get to the point of acquisition and can you show up and deliver? And that incentivizes showing up to the table and investing. And I think that conversation can occur in a joint way as well. And you talked about some of these, early participation and information sharing and looking at even requirements together. What are our sort of capability-based analysis we need to do for the threat in the Indo-Pacific, and bringing industry and academia out there from the start. That incentivizes being at the table, thinking through as we have competing demands for commercial clients and other opportunities that we want to put the investment into these opportunities. We see a pathway and we feel like we're setting ourselves up for success to know what's ahead.
Okay, so highlighting the importance of common requirements. Do you, from your perspective as a Japanese industry, do you have a clear understanding of what the U.S. requirements are and where you can plug in? How do you see these? How do you understand these? Brent, would you like to start with that one?
Yeah, I'd say it varies, and we have to be creative in our ways to go to market. I mean, this is another thing we can talk about. You know, there's no one strategy here about how to engage in this process, right? There's the government-to-government process. There's an engaging with our host governments, but there's also engagement, in the U.S. You know, we have a model of having a separate U.S. subsidiary that can engage directly as a U.S. company, or an industrial lab network to try to get in earlier. But I would say you've hit on a major gap. The gap of knowing the gaps, and it's a constant challenge to try to get into the right doors, have the right conversations that are appropriate at the appropriate information sharing levels, which is another topic to talk about, to understand that. That's a golden key there.
Thank you. Akiyama-san?
Yeah, I agree that, as a Japanese industry, we cannot go directly to the government, DOD, to talk about the requirements. So we have to have some government to government, but even government to government, they cannot share to industries most of the time, view requirements. So that's the kind of hurdle we understand. So that may go to the next info sharing, I think, that the export laws or controls, that's kind of a hurdle right now, because even just for feasibility studies or collaborating, we have to go to the Itar and get the license. Even that's not the production or real development, just for feasibility studies, we industry cannot share those detailed information or technologies each other yet.
That's a great point, and it actually derives, it leads directly to my next question, which are the biggest obstacles to deeper industry collaboration between U.S. and Japanese firms. I actually have Itar as one of my specific questions. It's the international traffic in arms regulations, and it's a regime that tries to work to make sure that sensitive technologies are not re-exported to actors that we do not want to have that technology. So that is frequently highlighted as a barrier. Would you like to reflect on that, Brent? Go ahead.
For sure, export controls is a major issue. We were encouraged by some of the actions by Congress here this past year, focused in the AUKUS relationship, looking at Itar reform and hoping, as with other parts of those relationships, we can expand that to some of our other allies for reform in that space. We see it on a regular basis where that can stand in the way of things. For sure, information sharing, I'll be a broken record all day on this, is a key challenge for these relationships, especially when you're dealing not just with, delivering a component, right? If we do that, we manufacture, we have components in all sorts for U.S. primes and space systems and defense systems and vice versa. But really our model and success for, I think, so many Japanese companies is a co-creation model, right? Where you're delivering software and building to a user requirements, in this case, commonly very exquisite systems that have high-end capabilities, and it needs to be a rich dialogue back and forth to tailor those systems. And clearly the industrial security differences between the countries has been a roadblock. We're encouraged by movement going on in the Japanese government with movement on the security clearance front, an important step forward. I think there'll continue to be more work to do on the industrial side of that. But that's something that we spend a lot of time on, interest in being respectful and mindful of those lines, but finding the opportunities where we can advance that and have a deeper conversation. And I'd say that then brings that sort of the second order effect of the challenge is Ms. Benkert's comment about speed and scale. Like, we need to have that information and be invested right to be able to deliver quickly. and when it's necessary, right? And understanding that timeline, that government timelines can take a long time, right? We're sitting there waiting, and even U.S. industry just focused on the U.S. government deals with that challenge of how long it's going to be, and then, oh, we're ready. Are you ready to deliver immediately, right? And so back to the rich dialogue that we want to be good customers, or excuse me, good vendors and suppliers. So.
Yeah. So, yes, from experience in doing the license production, we have to get all the documents and drawing from the prime in the United States. In that time, the biggest thing was the government had to sign the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Then our prime can go to the State Department, ask for the manufacturing license agreement. And that took time. Then we have to sign, everybody had to sign it. And those process, I understand that if you're producing that one, that'd be proper. But domestically, if you want to collaborate to another company to just focus on the feasibilities, then we just signed a non-disclosure agreement. Yeah. That's it, from industry to industry. But if it's come to U.S. industry, to Japanese industry, not NDA will be needed, but we have to go to the government to approve. And that's the kind of headache every time. Like doing the share production that I'm thinking of, so we can give the U.S. industry to make more the capability of production more to both government. But to talk about that, we have to go to State Department to even do just doing the feasibility studies that we can you produce this one in the United States, or U.S. can ask us to produce this one, like materials, composite materials and others. We have to go on the proper process. And that will take time, and we will like Minister said, that we may miss some timing. And the price also, the cost will do it individually, the cost will be lies anyway, so duplicate costing.
So the problem is not the regulations, the export control regulations themselves, which serve important functions. Mm-hmm. The real challenge for industry is the uncertainty that the timing involves. If you knew exactly when all the approvals would be granted, you could plan better for that, presumably.
Yes, I think so, yeah. Okay. But, try and error will happen for the feasibilities. Mm-hmm. So that timing is very hard to predict. Mm-hmm. So, if we know this timing, like 90 days, we need the license from the State Department, mm-hmm. then we can start studies. But if the study takes half a year, we'll miss a lot.
Okay.
So the way we industry do is sign the NDA first and do some discussion, then make the non-disclosure agreement deeper, adding that in contents. And that kind of thing for Itar doesn't allow that. Every time we have to give the scope of the work and take, 45 days or 30 days.
So speed and flexibility of government, application of government processes would enhance
the industry collaboration, I believe.
Okay, that's good. Are there other barriers we'd like to talk about besides export control? How about intellectual property, culture? What are other things that we should think about overcoming when we're trying to enhance collaboration between Japanese and U.S. industry?
Okay, yeah. I myself have been working a lot to U.S. industries and U.S. government, so mm-hmm. I feel no hurdles for that. But yes, the Japanese industrial culture is different still, mm-hmm. and so every time I go back, I try to not train but explain what the difference is. But it's hard because you're in Japan and you're living in Japan. You don't know what's happening. How to live in Washington, D.C. or others. And that's the vice versa, I think. But since we have been working many years, even for FMS or license production or DCS and maybe other opportunities, so it's getting better, I feel.
More understanding?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I'll defer to Akiyama-san on those cultural differences. I think those are good perspectives and something, obviously, us as a multinational company and a large U.S. presence think through a lot. And our own internal communications at NEC, and I see it in other companies as well, that try to alleviate some of those cultural differences. Obviously, IP issues do come up. It's a common conversation, I think, not just in multinational conversations, but domestically here in the U.S. of do we want to co-develop something with the U.S. government or not? Particularly important, I think, in the dual-use technology realm, which we spend a lot of time on. So much of these things have commercial applications, and oh, by the way, can be very effective for some defense platforms. And thinking, where do we want to make that investment, whether it's internal, with commercial partners, with government partners. So those terms and staying dynamic, I think, in those relationships and how we model those research efforts is important.
Okay, thank you. So this is a good discussion, and Akiyama-san, I am very interested. I mean, you have lived for years in the U.S. and for years in Japan, so you probably see this cultural issue very clearly. The only reference I have is I'm from New Jersey, and when I go to the rest of the country, there's always that cultural gap. I'd like to move on to an opportunity to let you both brag a little bit. So we know that the United States is a defense manufacturing powerhouse. We have the most powerful military in the world, a really amazing set of weapon systems that are developed, designed, produced by U.S. companies with an extensive U.S. supply chain. But Japan is a pretty solid industrial powerhouse as well. What are your perception of Japanese defense industrial strengths, and where might they plug best into the United States defense manufacturing ecosystem?
Okay. Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, we say Japanese defense industries, but it's not a defense industry. Like my company, IHI, the sales of the defense or aerospace is so small.
Broadly manufacturing, not
Yes,
defense
yes.
manufacturing, but your manufacturing strengths.
So, one thing is, I might not say this way, but since we lost the war and all the military or research was cut it off for a while, and then we had to started by indigenous development. So, kind of thing is we started from scratch again. So there's some kind of basic know-how, and another thing is working like a license production. We have to, what do you say? We are educated to comply to the requirement 100%. And if we fail that, we have to have a mishap reviews, and we have to correct all the procedures. And that meaning is that made the quality good enough for us, I think. So talking to the U.S. industries, then we can have those kind of discussion to make both better, understand the requirements. Is one of the benefits that maybe U.S. industries can feel.
Okay, so the focus on Six Sigma quality and
like that, yeah, right.
other real process improvements and achievements is one area where Japan shines and can contribute.
And we had, in some technology areas, we had to compete with U.S. industries. So we put on our investments, very tiny areas that we may, the U.S. we can share with the U.S. industries now.
Okay.
I don't disagree with Akiyama-san. The quality manufacturing of high-end systems is something that I think is pervasive throughout so many parts at the large industry down to small and medium-sized businesses. And excited, the startup ecosystem in Japan is exciting to watch too, and some exciting things coming out of smaller companies. I'd take with the sort of perspective on short versus long term, I'd expand it beyond just manufacturing too. So for sure, just in broader technology development, I think there's a lot of complementary capabilities between the United States and Japan, and something from our vantage that I see from an NEC perspective, where we see the greatest interest from U.S. primes, from the Defense Department and other federal agencies, is on really this emerging technology area. So in areas around AI and ML, that capabilities for the Defense Department, obviously you're talking about UAS and CCA and other capabilities for autonomy, human-machine interface capabilities, next-generation communications. Obviously, a very important point that Ms. Menkar touched on at the end, interoperability of communication systems and just next-generation communications, whether it's terrestrial or space-based, a lot to be able to contribute there. I'd also add, we talk a lot about things going on in the air, but for sure in the undersea domain too. From a sensor perspective, acoustics, all sorts of interesting things that I think it's imperative for the U.S. and Japan to cooperate on those things. Obviously, with our forces operating so closely together, they really need those systems to work well together.
That's a great overview. Are there particular programs that? Oh, okay.
Programs,
Please add on.
No. I don't want to say this way, but our Japanese young generations, like toys, animation, everything, their technology is much maybe higher than us adults. So there's a possibility we can adopt those thinkings. And yeah, I don't know how to do that yet, but one of the ideas is some industry, Japanese old defense industries, to combine those startups and support them. How to do the defense business is maybe another way, and then introduce the United States maybe.
So really try to get smaller, emerging, innovative companies to work together.
Yes.
Not just for the benefits of cooperation, but actually to develop useful new things.
Yeah, because the startups doesn't know how to do business with governments, and somebody had to support it. And Yoshida-san said, after I will support, but that's a big workforce also.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk between ATLA and the industries to how to maximize those collaboration and timely manner and cost effectiveness. Maybe a chance for Japanese industry to be competitive to United States industries maybe.
I think this is a really interesting line of discussion, and it makes me think about the difference between cooperation on the prime contractor level, cooperation on the small and emerging businesses level, and also what prime contractors can do to bring on board emerging, innovative companies from the other nation. So how are do you see, what could you do as prime contractors yourselves to bring in this, to enhance this cooperation? We always look at the government as the requirement setter, as the funder, and as the holder of the regulations that need to be managed. But is there anything that industry can do independently to enhance this collaboration?
I just can't say. Right now, yes, I can say yes, but not actual ideas yet. But
Okay.
I think there's for sure different strategies in different markets, and we just here in the U.S. and our U.S. business, a very robust effort of finding partners that bring unique capabilities, and I think particularly too in the deeper, the lower TRL efforts to develop technologies, we may not have in-house, right? And we're trying to find something innovative coming out of, we do a lot of work in our industrial labs and stuff gathering dust that we can't even productize, but there's things that we aren't developing, and being part of those longer term research efforts sometimes drives that we need to go find a partner who's doing the cutting edge thing in a particular space.
Good. Okay, well, I'd like to turn to the Q&A. You know, we have a great audience here. But before that, I'd like to give you both one last chance to offer any specific recommendations you might have on how to enhance U.S.-Japanese bilateral cooperation. And this time you can point the finger at the government and tell us what they should be doing.
Yeah, so two of them is for both government, I think. That the first one, I mean saying that I want to do the Japanize the U.S. platforms. Mm-hmm. That needs many coordination between the government also. And another thing is the cross, I call it cross or share productions. Then both government has to qualify and how the both government can collaborate to qualify made in Japan and made in US as a one product. And the final thing is I had to appreciate Yoshida-san. The GOKO was the thing. Most of the Japanese industry doesn't understand what GOKO is. Government-owned, cooperated, operated. Mm-hmm. Because after the World War II, GOKO was not allowed in the Japanese law. But before that, everything was GOKO. Mm-hmm. Like the fighters' production line facility, that was GOKO, done by Mitsubishi and Nakajima. But after the war, it's canceled. But still, in the United States, many primes has a GOKO. And that's benefit the corporate operations a lot. So, and I really appreciate Yoshida-san's work, the word of GOKO, and I'm looking forward to push that to my company also and the government.
Thank you.
Well, you asked me at the beginning to sort of reflect a little bit too from perspectives from U.S. government or a little congressional perspective, I think, from previous. And I'll just say, as a strategic perspective, this is a really exciting time. Like so much has changed. Just looking, 2015, just 10 years ago. One, looking at U.S. defense industrial policy, and 15 years ago, 10 years ago, thinking, going through times of sequestration and just starting to find identities of untrusted parts of our supply chain, and how do we map this supply chain, and who are our suppliers, and do we have single source vulnerabilities? Like, it was just a lot of black box out there, and to see how far our defense industrial base policy and the strategies have come here in the past years is really important, and really important from a multinational perspective. And then, as we talked about, so much going on in Japan, from the national security strategies, from the Defense Investment Economic Security Promotion Act, in addition to the Defense Production Act. I mean, this is a time to seize, I think, this cooperation. And so, no finger pointing at the government. That way, just keeping up the momentum is great. And I would just then add, from an industry perspective of advice, and I talked a little bit about it. It's an all of the above strategy of trying to find these plug-in opportunities. There's the government to government. There's the direct from Japan to U.S. primes, and vice versa, U.S. primes or U.S. suppliers to Japanese primes. There is the research arms, and going through academic partnerships with the Defense Department. There's having U.S. subsidiaries who can have even deeper relationships for narrow technologies, looking at second, third, fourth tier supply opportunities. Just having this connective tissue over the long term is what we need, so that when we're having the same conversation in 10 years, it's a different level of conversation of how are we deepening things even further. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you for that. And I am similarly inspired by the amount of effort and energy that I see. And you just said it, when we're having the same conversation in 10 years. I will say that 10 years ago, we were not having this conversation. So I'm hoping that this momentum continues, and we're going to see real progress in the next 10 years. And with that, I'd like to open it up to audience questions. Greg? Please state where you're from, and as Chris said earlier, try to keep your questions relatively concise.
So one point when Ms. Bankard raised in the NDIS is avoiding unnecessary customization. And one challenge here is I think Japanese industry is naturally focused on domestic production at a rapidly rising budget. So as we think about early coordination, even when focused on Japanese production, what can make that easier? You've raised a lot of challenges in information sharing. One thing we've been looking at some are open standards, open architectures. Is that something you can freely communicate on? Is that an area where the Japanese and U.S. government can do more to help? Or would you recommend a different area to focus on for early coordination, even when it's perhaps Japanese focus at the start? Thank you.
It's a great question.
I think it's a really good point. I think first, your comment about the focus on the defense or the Japanese defense market is actually its own challenge of there's a lot of work to do in Japan, and the increased investment and getting some attention in engineering resources looking at co-development of things. And I think your point about standards and modularity is important. You know, we see that a lot from the telecommunications side. You know, we're obviously deal deeply in standards development and the importance of, you know, we're dealing on the commercial side in open radio access networks and the value that can bring of being much more flexible, bringing solutions to market. So for sure, and we see it in our development of capabilities in Japan that we're hopeful for future interoperability with similar U.S. defense systems developing at the same time, and opportunities for just some basic discussion about standards and modularity as early as possible saves money and increases capability. So,
I agree to that. And from the manufacturing standpoint, what do you say? The requirement, understanding the requirement is very critical, and that takes time. And for the, but how to say? Yeah. So, and I understand that the Japanese market is very unique and different to here, but to go to global markets, there we have to change the corporate company's mind a lot. And for the commercial side, most of the company, you say Japanese defense industry, but mostly those are global industries already. So in the commercial side, they know how to do the business. And maybe we need more discussion with inside the company, how to do the global. In the old days, defense section or department was so unique and dedicated. But people in the defense and space had to change their mind internally, I think. And then it's gonna change a lot, I believe so.
Thank you. More questions?
Hi, Chris McKenzie, recently retired from the Department of Defense in the Industrial Base Policy Office, and do consulting now, and also a non-resident senior associate at CSIS. Question is that I know both the United States and partners and allies are very interested in co-development, co-production. That's, obviously, one of the main goals. However, having experience, trying to scale up production, trying to mitigate some of the industrial-based gaps that the U.S. was facing and partners and allies were facing as we were trying to increase production for Ukraine, for instance. It's really helpful also to look at mitigating, subsystem and component shortages instead of just, focusing on the big prize, which is co-development, co-production. Recognizing that, yes, we should strive for that. It seems that there's some reluctance to focus on some of those, I guess, seeming less important or less strategic things of just, cooperating on component sharing and sharing of components and developing capability to help mitigate some of those shortfalls. So I just would be curious about your comments on that, please.
So from my experience, I have been doing the development and as an engineer, so I'll go so deep and narrow maybe. The thing is, the co-production or co-development, the designers or engineers struggle with Japanese SI unit to American inch unit. And even that unit goes to the thermal analysis, structure analysis, everything. And if we can make a common units. And then we can share those, not the drawings, but so like the, threads, it's different. So if we produce a US designed component, it's inch. And that makes a lot of time for redesigning it and hard to find the inch nuts and bolts. But if it's metric, we have the industrial base already. And that's the very deep and narrow, maybe, but one of the things make more efficient and cost effective, I think. And then that's the reason I came to Japanize. US component, but we can use the meter unit or the connectors, Japanese connectors, and just make the wire harness in between to connect those. And that's much more, I believe, the effectiveness of industrial base capacity growing, I think.
Yeah, I think I mentioned about finding opportunities for third, fourth tier supply opportunities. It totally is important and something we focus on. I was just seeing some members of our team this week here who sell components into U.S. primes for space systems, and the same times signing partnership deals with U.S. companies for vice versa supplies of components, in particular parts for those types of systems. So those relationships, and those obviously need to have a business case that makes sense, and especially from the government procurement perspective and timelines and so forth. But totally agree, very important.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and if not, we will draw this event to a close. All right. Well, thank you both. Round of applause for our industry panelists.
Thank you.
And thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
That's all. Thank you. Stay.
Depends how long the wrap up is.
You want me to? Oh, come on.
Yes. You have to stay here.
Okay, well, this has been, I think, a terrific conversation with both government and industry perspectives. And this topic of defense industrial and technology cooperation between the U.S. and Japan, really, I think it's been demonstrated here this morning, a significant area of opportunity in U.S.-Japan relations, one that is for the most part new, right? We do have a history of some cooperation on some major projects like the SM-3 Block 2A ballistic missile defense interceptor, but I think what's reflected here is the much wider sort of stage we have to play on now as a result of changes to Japanese law, Japanese policy, as well as priorities from a U.S. defense industrial base perspective. And I think it's also an urgent area, right? When we think about the security challenges we face, the pacing threat of China, this urgency of bringing capability online quickly and innovating quickly, I think is one that both of us share need to tackle. So I think this conversation this morning has been great in illuminating some of the issues, both challenges and opportunities, and hopefully points a path as well toward new areas of cooperation as we think about the state visit that's coming up. So thanks to all of you for joining. Thanks to our speakers, both government and industry. Please join me in another round of applause for both. Thanks to ATLA for sponsoring this effort, and we'll be releasing our report on this subject in the coming weeks. So thanks again.